At 11:46 p.m., my phone lit up with a message that ended 15 years of silence I'd been calling loyalty. It was from my sister, Melissa. "We've agreed you're no longer family. Mom said don't come home." No emojis, no follow-up, just a digital firing squad. I didn't respond. I didn't even blink. I'd been trained to stay calm when the unexpected hits Afghanistan taught me that. You don't react, you assess. So I sat there, in a room so quiet I could hear the fridge humming like it was eavesdropping. I read the message twice, not because I didn't understand it, but because it was the kind of sentence that makes your brain reboot. My sister and my mother, together, voting me out of my own bloodline. Like a boardroom decision motion passed, meeting adjourned. Most people would cry, call, beg for context. I opened my laptop instead. If my family had just declared independence, I was about to declare an audit. The cursor blinked on my banking dashboard like a green light. Mortgage cancel autopay. Car insurance remove authorized users. Utilities log out, revoke access. Every bill that connected to their comfort disappeared with a few keystrokes. Years of support erased in minutes. When I joined the Air Force, I learned how to dismantle complex systems under pressure. Turns out, families run the same way, just fewer safety checks and more guilt. At 11:52, I stopped to take a breath. Not a shaky one, just steady. That was the scariest part, how calm I felt. I wasn't angry, I was efficient. I scrolled back through old messages, Mom asking for a little help this month, Melissa promising, "I'll pay you back soon." My own replies always short and stupidly polite. Of course. No problem. Happy to help. Helping had become my full-time side job. Rent, tuition, car repairs, even a bailout for a boutique, Melissa started online and crashed faster than her credit score. Every dollar I sent had come with the same lie I told myself. This will make things better. Now, that lie was done. The military teaches that loyalty is earned, not assumed. My family never got that memo. They'd built a whole life on my salary and silence. I closed my banking tab and opened a spreadsheet. The title, Operation Ledger. Column A, date. Column B, amount. Column C, reason. Column D, proof. I typed the first entry, December 2018, $12,000, mortgage payment to avoid foreclosure. The one that Mom called a blessing. Yeah, I was the blessing. By 11:59, I had 26 entries. I wasn't crying, shaking, or second-guessing. I was documenting. At midnight sharp, my phone buzzed again, a heart reaction from Melissa. She had liked her own betrayal. That's when it clicked. This wasn't emotional, it was sport. Betrayal as a family hobby. Fine. I had my own hobbies too. I checked my email, 4 accounts linked to their names, all under my credentials. 1 click each. Revoke, 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 revoke. The kind of satisfaction you don't cheer about, you just feel it settle deep in your chest, like balance returning after years of chaos. By 12:03 a.m., the electric bill that ran their house was officially disconnected from my card. The phone plan followed. Then the property tax draft. Each click felt like a quiet salute to the version of me that thought love meant paying to be tolerated. It's funny, people always imagine revenge as loud. They picture shouting, slammed doors, courtroom scenes. But the best kind happens in silence. Just you, a screen, and a Wi-Fi connection strong enough to cut someone off financially. Outside my window, the base was quiet. No traffic, no chatter, just that stillness before dawn when even the air feels classified. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the message one more time. "We've agreed you're no longer family." It almost sounded polite, like they were giving me a chance to pack up my emotions and go. The truth is, they'd never really included me. I'd just been funding my membership. I took a sip of cold coffee and thought about the last time we'd all been together, a Sunday dinner 6 months ago. Mom corrected my posture in front of everyone, said I looked too rigid. Melissa joked that I was basically a robot after years in uniform. Dad had laughed, called me Captain Serious. I smiled through it all because that's what I did. Keep peace, stay composed. That dinner had felt like a family gathering. Now, I realized it was a farewell party I hadn't been told about. The refrigerator hummed again. I ignored it and kept typing. Each transaction filled the spreadsheet like puzzle pieces snapping into place. For the first time in years, I could see the full picture, and it wasn't love. It was accounting. I clicked open my notes app and wrote one line. You can't fire the person who built the company. Then I shut the laptop. The screen went dark, and for a moment, so did every bit of guilt I'd been feeding for a decade. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. I picked up my phone, scrolled past Melissa's message, and set it face down. The vibration alerts started coming in, one from Mom, one from Dad. I didn't read them. There was nothing left to discuss. I stood, stretched my back, and glanced at the small wall calendar beside my desk. The date glowed faintly in the nightlight. October 14. A date that used to mean nothing. Now, it was the day I stopped being their daughter and started being their auditor. The clock ticked past 12:04, steady and calm. I smiled. I knew the next part was coming, the part where they'd realize the lights were off, the Wi-Fi disconnected, the mortgage unpaid. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of their reaction. I was curious. The first sound I noticed was the coffee maker clicking off. It had been on for hours. I poured the last bit into a chipped mug, black and burnt, and watched the steam fade. That smell always reminded me of deployment mornings, cheap caffeine, and control. My laptop screen still glowed with the spreadsheet I'd started. Rows of numbers, each one a receipt for a mistake disguised as generosity. It looked too clean for what it represented. The first entry was 2018, the mortgage I saved. I remembered that night like a briefing. Mom crying on speakerphone, Melissa whispering in the background, "Please, Lindsay, it's just this once." Their voices layered over each other until it sounded like noise, not people. I was 28, stationed overseas, and transferring 12 grand from a desert-based Wi-Fi connection because that's what family does. Back then, I was still the daughter who believed that sacrifice equaled love. Mom always knew which buttons to push. "You have your father's discipline," she'd say, like it was both a compliment and a guilt trip. "You understand responsibility. We just need help until things stabilize." Things never stabilized. They just found new ways to tilt. After Dad's failed investment back in 2015, Mom changed. She used to be warm, funny, always baking something. Then she started counting money, favors, who owed what. She didn't track the numbers on paper. She tracked them emotionally. Every time I called, it started with, "I hate to ask, but," and ended with, "You've always been the dependable one." That's how manipulation works when it's dressed as gratitude. I looked over at the corner of the room, where my Air Force uniform still hung. The creases were sharp enough to cut a finger. I hadn't worn it in years, but I never got rid of it. That uniform had rules. The family didn't. I scrolled down to 2019, $3,800 for Melissa's tuition after she lost her scholarship. She called crying, said she'd make it right. The next year, I paid again, and again. 3 semesters later, she dropped out. Somewhere in between, Mom convinced me to co-sign her new car. A reliable one, she said. I didn't even argue. I was busy moving cargo and people through a war zone. It felt easier to just say yes and keep moving. Funny how I could organize supply chains across continents, but I couldn't manage my own family. When I came home in 2020, I thought things would be different. The first night back, I showed up with a duffel bag and a grin, expecting dinner, maybe a welcome sign. Instead, I found Mom at the kitchen table with bills spread out like a war map. "You're home just in time," she said. That line still makes me laugh. She pushed a stack of envelopes toward me. "We're behind again. Just a few things." I remember staring at the pile of utilities, taxes, credit cards, and asking, "What happened to the loan I sent last fall?" She didn't blink. "That went to Melissa's business. It's doing well." The next day, I learned doing well meant one website, 0 sales, and a $10,000 inventory of clothes stacked in the garage. That was the first time I realized Mom and Melissa weren't victims of circumstance, they were partners in denial. I didn't call them out. I just paid the bills. When I moved into my own place near the base a year later, Mom said, "Don't forget, you're still part of this family." That was her version of a chain. I took a sip of the bitter coffee and scrolled through the spreadsheet again. Every line had a memory stitched to it. The months I skipped vacations to cover their emergencies. The time I sold my car so Mom could keep hers. I used to think it was noble. Now it just looked like data in a crime report. Dad was the only one who ever seemed uncomfortable with the whole setup. He'd call me sometimes, quiet voice saying, "I wish they'd stop leaning on you." But he never intervened. He'd learned long ago to survive by staying neutral. In our family, silence was self-preservation. When I was a kid, Dad taught me how to balance a checkbook. "Money tells the truth," he said. "People just don't like listening." That line came back to me now. I flipped open the folder on my desk labeled House 2018. Inside was the loan agreement. My name, their address, my credit. Mom had promised to refinance it within a year. It had been 5. Every legal document had my signature. Every mistake had my money. There's something brutal about realizing your biggest act of love was also your dumbest. I clicked to add another entry. February 2021 property tax, $2,300. Reason: they forgot again. I paused before typing proof. There was no proof that guilt had teeth, but I added the PDF anyway. When I enlisted at 19, the recruiter told me, "You'll learn accountability fast." He was right, but no one warns you that it's the one thing your family won't forgive you for having. The screen brightness dimmed slightly, the laptop reminding me I'd been still too long. I leaned back, stretching. The clock said 1:37 a.m. It wasn't exhaustion, I felt it was something cleaner. Like the air right after a storm passes. I closed my eyes for a moment. Images flashed. Mom's hand on my shoulder, Melissa crying about tuition, Dad at the kitchen table saying nothing. Each memory came with a receipt attached. When I opened my eyes again, I noticed my hand resting on the old uniform jacket. The patch read duty, honor, discipline. Words I'd followed everywhere but home. I smiled at how ironic that was. The spreadsheet kept growing, and with each line, I felt lighter, not freer yet just aware. Some people find peace in forgiveness. I find it in documentation. The cursor blinked, waiting for the next entry. I typed, Mai 2022, $5, Melissa loan for boutique, never repaid. I stared at the words for a second before adding the last column. Proof. Screenshot, text messages, attached. The pattern was obvious now. Every request had the same tone, guilt wrapped in affection. Every payment ended the same way, silence once the money cleared. I rubbed my thumb along the edge of the mug, the ceramic rough from years of use. For a long time, I thought endurance was love. Turns out, endurance was just convenient for everyone else. The base siren went off in the distance, a routine drill, probably. It made me laugh under my breath. Somewhere out there, people were preparing for emergencies. Meanwhile, I was just learning how to stop funding mine. I hit save. The file name blinked at the top of the screen. Operation Ledger. The document wasn't finished, but it didn't need to be tonight. I leaned back, eyes still open, and let the sound of quiet fill the room. The calm didn't feel strange anymore. It felt deserved. The sound of the keyboard came first, sharp, even, steady. My fingers moved like they were following an order I'd already written. Every tap had purpose. Every number had weight. I wasn't angry anymore. I was analyzing. The spreadsheet had grown overnight, 42 entries, all verified. Payments, transfers, even the time I paid Melissa's phone bill because she couldn't risk losing her business line. That business had lasted 6 weeks. I sorted by amount. The top 3 made me laugh, a short, dry sound in an empty room. 12,000, 10,000, 8,500. All gone to people who still called themselves struggling. I zoomed out to see the total. $67,423. That number stared back at me like a bad punchline. The military had taught me to measure efficiency. I realized my family was running a perfect operation, high yield, low accountability. At 8 a.m., my phone started vibrating across the table. Mom first, then Melissa. I let them ring out, then Dad. I didn't answer that one either. When guilt stops working, the next move is panic. The messages came next. Can you please call your mother? What did you do with the utilities? This isn't funny, Lindsay. I read each one and archived them like evidence. The pattern was obvious. No apologies, just demands. They didn't want conversation. They wanted control back. At Kahadikson. 42, Melissa texted. You're overreacting. I didn't reply. I just typed it into the spreadsheet under notes. Phase 2. Gaslighting begins. I opened my email and started drafting something simple. To Diane and Melissa Hartman. Subject: Account reconciliation. I'm reviewing all financial obligations tied to my accounts. Do not attempt to access or modify any shared resources. Documentation in progress. No emotion, no threat, just language they'd never used before. Boundaries. I hit send and sat back, letting the silence land like a decision. Across the apartment, my Air Force plaques lined the wall. I'd spent a decade tracking shipments, auditing inventory, documenting everything from fuel to food. The system was predictable. If something went missing, there was always a trail. That same discipline was the one thing my family never expected I'd use against them. By 9:15, another text popped up, Mom this time. We need to talk about what you've done. You've created a mess. The phrasing was familiar. In her language, mess meant accountability. I typed one line back. You should start your own spreadsheet. Then I muted her number. The calm that followed wasn't cold. It was mathematical. For the first time, my emotions lined up neatly beside the data. I poured another cup of coffee and reviewed the account statements again. My name appeared everywhere. Mortgage, car loan, joint savings, property tax. Even the Hartman family fund that Mom bragged about at church, also funded by me. It was like discovering your identity had been rebranded without your consent. At 10:02, I received an email from the energy company confirming the payment cancellation. I marked it as complete. Then the phone buzzed again, Dad. I almost picked up, then didn't. He'd only try to mediate, to tell me Mom didn't mean it that way. He always said that, like intent erased outcome. I checked my reflection in the laptop screen. I looked the same, hair tied back, plain t-shirt, steady eyes, but something had shifted behind them. The cursor blinked. I started a new tab in the spreadsheet, emotional liabilities. I wasn't sure why, but I began listing the non-financial costs. Missed birthdays, canceled plans, ignored boundaries, things I'd let slide because family first. Halfway down the list, I wrote something new. Self, respect, overdue balance. I leaned back in my chair. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of traffic outside. My phone vibrated again, Melissa. Voicemail this time. I let it play on speaker. Lindsay, Mom's upset. You need to calm down. You're making things worse. Just call her, okay? I smiled, not out of joy but recognition. That tone, half concern, half command, was the soundtrack of my life. It used to work, not anymore. I deleted the voicemail. Then I created a folder on my desktop. Family records. Inside, I dropped every screenshot, bank statement, and message. It looked clinical, but it was the first time anything about my family had been organized. By noon, the first real consequence arrived: an email from the mortgage company. Payment declined. Please update payment information to avoid penalty. Perfect. I knew exactly how long it would take before Mom noticed, about 10 minutes after her morning coffee. Sure enough, the next call came in at 12:16. I didn't answer. Then another text. Why are you doing this? You're ruining everything. Ruining everything. That was the phrase that always showed up right before they asked for money. I typed it into the spreadsheet under pattern recognition. I stared at the line until it blurred. Then I realized something simple but important. I wasn't ruining anything. I was just removing myself from the ruins. The quiet stretched. I checked the total again. 67,423. I added one more entry. Emotional cost priceless. At 1:03 p.m., the email from my bank came through. Your account settings have been updated. All linked users removed. It was done. The next sound was unexpected, a laugh, low and short. I hadn't laughed in weeks. It felt strange, almost reckless. The phone buzzed again, Mom, then Melissa, then Mom again. The silence on my end must have felt like punishment to them. For me, it felt like a promotion. I stood and walked to the window. The Texas sun was bright, sharp through the glass. Outside, life went on: neighbors walking dogs, a kid riding a bike, traffic humming, Normal things. It was wild how normal looked from a distance when your own world had just been evicted. I went back to the desk and opened my notes app. One line at the top read, "Revenge is emotion. Justice is math." I didn't remember typing it, but it sounded like me. The email pings kept coming: account updates, payment cancellations, confirmation receipts. Each one felt like a quiet drumbeat in the background of a mission I hadn't known I was running. I wasn't fixing my family anymore. I was filing them. The laptop screen dimmed again, reminding me to take a break. I ignored it. There was still more to document, and I wasn't finished collecting. I opened another folder: archives, personal. Inside, I dropped an old photo from 2019. Me, Mom, Melissa, and Dad standing in front of the house I bought for them. Everyone smiling but me. Looking at that picture now, I didn't see family. I saw beneficiaries. The cursor blinked again. I saved everything, closed the folders, and set my laptop to sleep mode. The phone buzzed one last time before I turned it over. The message read, "Call us back. This isn't what family does." I almost laughed again. No, I thought. This is exactly what family does until you stop letting them. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was precise. The email from Phoenix Federal hit my inbox like a stray bullet. Subject line. Notice. Suspicious activity on your account. It was 10:48 p.m., and I was halfway through labeling receipts when I saw it. I clicked. It wasn't one of my accounts. Not officially. The message said a new credit line had been opened under my name 3 months ago. $15,000 limit. Near maxed out. Transactions showed clothing boutiques, airline tickets, and one payment labeled business inventory. I already knew. Melissa. She had always been allergic to the concept of limits. I took a screenshot and checked the signature on the digital form. The signature looked like mine if mine had been written by someone using their foot. I didn't panic. I saved the file under Fraud Investigation 1 PDF. Then I opened my spreadsheet and added a new entry. Unauthorized account, July 2023. Primary suspect. Family. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. There, it was proof that all the quiet suspicions weren't paranoia. When I called the bank's fraud department, the agent sounded bored until I mentioned identity theft. Suddenly, her tone changed. "Miss Hartman, do you know the person who might have opened this?" "Oh yeah," I said. "I used to share a bathroom with her." She paused. "So, a family member? Something like that?" "And Grace." She explained the steps: freeze the account, submit ID verification, upload a copy of my driver's license. It was clinical, efficient, painless. I'd been through worse procedures on base before breakfast. When the call ended, I just sat there, staring at the blank part of the spreadsheet. The realization felt cold, not because it was shocking, but because it wasn't. I'd seen this coming like bad weather on radar. At 11:12, I called Mom. I didn't text first. If she wanted to act like the CEO of betrayal, she could get a formal meeting. She answered on the third ring. "Lindsay? Honey, what's going on?" I got an alert from the bank. "There's a card in my name. It's not mine." Silence. Then, too fast. "Oh, that. Melissa just needed help for her business." "Help means permission, Mum, not forgery. Don't make a scene." Her voice sharpened like it always did when she felt cornered. "She said she told you." "She didn't." Well, she thought you wouldn't mind." That line made me laugh short and dry. "You're right. I don't mind. The bank will." "Lindsay, please don't do this," she said, the plea already rehearsed. "Family has to stick together." "Then you should have stuck with honesty." I hung up before she could start crying. It used to work. Not tonight. The phone buzzed seconds later. Melissa, of course. I didn't answer. She followed with a text. "I was gonna tell you. You overreact about everything." Then, I typed one sentence and deleted it. Then I typed another. "Theft isn't a misunderstanding." I didn't send it. Instead, I saved her message as a screenshot. Evidence first, emotions later. The spreadsheet glowed like a crime scene map. I'd spent years cataloging their needs. Now, I was cataloging their lies. At 11:38, I called Nadia. We hadn't spoken in months, but I knew she'd answer. She always did. "Hey, Captain," she said, voice sharp as ever. Hey, counselor. Arlie. Trouble? Define trouble. You're calling me after 11. I told her everything briefly, fact by fact. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. All right, start a folder. Screenshots, bank records, every message. Don't delete anything. Don't confront them again directly. That's going to be difficult, I said. You managed insurgents with fewer rules of engagement. You'll be fine. Her tone was half joking, half serious, exactly what I needed. I asked, what's the next step? Officially, file a report with the bank. Unofficially, prepare yourself. Family fraud gets messy. After we hung up, I labeled a new folder on my desktop. Operation Evidence. The cursor blinked. I added subfolders. Banking, communication, legal, personal. Years of emotional chaos finally had structure. It was almost midnight when I started reading back through Melissa's old texts. You're the responsible one. You understand money. You always fix things. Each one sounded like a setup. By the time I finished, the apartment felt colder. I checked the thermostat, it hadn't changed. Maybe it was just me adjusting to this new version of reality, one where family came with fine print. I poured a glass of water and stared at the reflection in the kitchen window. I didn't look betrayed. I looked focused. The phone buzzed again, Mom. Voicemail. I put it on speaker. Lindsay, stop making this worse. She didn't mean it. You're just tired, honey. We'll talk tomorrow. I deleted it. Tomorrow had nothing new to say. I opened the email draft Nadia had sent while we were talking template for a formal dispute notice. Dear Phoenix Federal Bank, I am writing to report unauthorized activity. Reading it felt like typing my own freedom letter. When I hit send, there was no satisfaction, just a clean silence. The laptop chimed as the email confirmation arrived. I logged out and sat still for a while, letting the moment settle. It was strange how easy it was to dismantle a lie once you stopped protecting it. Around 12:20, I walked to the closet. My old uniform hung there, pressed and unused. I touched the sleeve, tracing the patch with my thumb. Duty, honor, discipline. The same rules that built me were now guiding this. The military never trained me for betrayal, but it had trained me for procedure. That was enough. I went back to the desk and made one more note in the spreadsheet. Fraud confirmed. Emotional detachment achieved. The phrase made me laugh a little. If this were a movie, this would be the part where dramatic music plays. But real life doesn't score its moments. It just moves forward. The phone stayed silent for the first time in hours. No calls, no messages. Maybe they were asleep, or maybe they were regrouping. It didn't matter. I was already 10 steps ahead. I checked the clock 12:47 a.m. The glow from the laptop washed over the room like artificial moonlight. I closed the lid halfway, but the light still leaked out. I thought about the old saying Dad used to tell me, you can't fix what you don't measure. Well, I was done fixing. But measuring? That I could do all night. I opened the laptop again and scrolled through my entries. The numbers didn't look like losses anymore. They looked like coordinates, every lie plotted neatly in rows and columns, leading to one truth. They'd used me because I let them. That realization wasn't painful. It was clarifying. The cursor blinked at the bottom of the sheet, waiting for one more line. I typed it without hesitation. Next step. Legal validation. Then I hit save. The file name updated, timestamp included. It wasn't closure. It was documentation. Outside, the first hints of morning light started bleeding into the sky. I watched it without moving. Eyes dry, heartbeat steady. There was no sadness left. Just precision. The first notification came at 8:06 a.m. I was halfway through my morning workout when my phone lit up with a tag on Facebook. I don't even use Facebook anymore, but my mother does. Religiously. The post read, "Some people forget who raised them once they start making money. Pride comes before destruction." 3 dozen likes, mostly from relatives who hadn't texted me in years. I didn't comment. I didn't even open the app again. But I took a screenshot, renamed it Public Statement, Mother, 1, PNG, and dropped it into my evidence folder. Documentation before emotion, always. By the time I showered, there were 2 more posts. One from Melissa. Family should support each other. not punish each other. Another from Mom's friend Carol. She always seemed cold. I'm not surprised. The gossip engine was running at full speed. I made coffee. Black. No sugar. The smell of caffeine mixed with burnt irony. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again, this time from my dad. Can you please explain what's going on with the bills? Your mother's losing it. It almost made me laugh. The phrasing said everything your mother's losing it, as if chaos was a power outage and not a personality trait. I replied with one sentence. The accounts have been corrected. Tell her to call the bank. No punctuation, no signature. At yhdeksän. 14. Melissa texted, "Why are you doing this? You're ruining everything." Same line, different day. I ignored it. She sent another right after. "This isn't you. You're acting crazy." That one made me pause. I typed back, "No, this is me. You just never met this version." Then deleted it before sending. It was a good line, but wasted on the wrong audience. I scrolled through her profile out of curiosity. Her new status read, "Some people think revenge is power. It's actually weakness." Funny how the people who lie the most always sound like motivational speakers when caught. By 10, I had 3 voicemails, 2 missed calls, and a new message request from some aunt I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. She wanted to hear my side. There wasn't a side anymore, just a record. Still, I kept everything. Screenshots, names, timestamps. If they wanted to take this online, I was happy to build a digital museum of hypocrisy. At 11:23, my phone rang again. Nadia. "Hey, Captain, you seeing the circus?" she asked. "Front row seat," I said. "Good. Don't engage. The more they post, the more leverage we have. Keep collecting." "I already am." "Of course you are." Her confidence in me was almost comforting. Almost. I opened my email. A new message from the fraud investigator at Phoenix Federal. They'd confirmed irregular signatures and pending verification. I forwarded it to Nadia without hesitation. The next ping was another Facebook tag, this time a cousin. "I can't believe what she's doing to her own family," someone wrote underneath. I scrolled through the thread until I found the comment that made me stop. A woman named Gina, one of Mom's sisters, wrote, "Wait, isn't Lindsay the one who saved their house after foreclosure?" Silence. No replies. The thread froze. For the first time, someone else said the truth out loud. Not me, not the villain they painted. Someone else. I exhaled slowly, then closed the app again. At noon, Melissa called. I didn't pick up. She tried again, and this time, curiosity won. I answered. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and entitlement. "Having coffee. Mom's freaking out. The house bills, everything's messed up. You're making a scene." "Melissa," I said, calm as if I were reading coordinates. "You stole from me." "I didn't steal. I borrowed. Borrowing requires consent." She went quiet. Then, "You don't understand. I had to do it. You have so much, and we had nothing." "No, you had plenty. You just didn't earn any of it." "No." She started crying. The same tired performance I'd seen 100 times. I let her finish, then said, "This conversation is being documented," and hung up. It wasn't, but I liked the sound of it. At 12:42, Mom posted again. This one was longer, a full essay. We raised her with love, gave her everything, and now she's turned her back on us. She's using lawyers and money to destroy her own family. Below it, the comments were a mix of sympathy and skepticism. Some people said they were praying for her. Others started asking questions. Didn't she co-sign your house? Didn't she pay for Melissa's tuition? The tone of the thread shifted. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. People were starting to do the math on their own. At 1:10 p.m., I got a message from an unknown number. "You think this makes you strong? You're heartless." No name, but I knew the style. Mom loved dramatics. I replied with one word. Received. Then I blocked the number. By mid-afternoon, the story had made its way through every extended branch of the family tree. Cousins, uncles, old neighbors, they all had opinions. Half painted me as a monster. The other half quietly messaged to say, "Good for you." Funny how truth sounds rebellious when you've been polite too long. At 3, Nadia called again. "You'll want to see this. she said. She forwarded me a new link, Melissa's business page, the one funded by the stolen card. Still active, still using my photo from the day I visited the shop opening. The caption read, "Proud family business built on love and teamwork." I stared at it for a long second, then sent the link back to Nadia. Add that to the file. Already did. The efficiency between us almost made it feel like a mission briefing. By 4:30, the noise online had quieted down. The outrage cycle moves fast when no one feeds it. Mom's last post had stopped gaining traction. I imagined her sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling furiously, waiting for someone to validate her version of events. I didn't feel angry. I just felt distant, like watching weather hit another city. The apartment was calm again. I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning, the kind of quiet you can only appreciate once you've lived inside noise your whole life. I checked my inbox, new message from the fraud investigator. Case approved for escalation. Legal team to contact within 48 hours. Progress. Real, measurable progress. I poured another cup of coffee and opened my notes. One line stood out from what I'd written the night before. Revenge is emotion. Justice is math. The math was starting to check out. Outside, the sky had turned the same color as dull metal. I watched it for a moment before shutting the blinds. The phone was still on silent. I planned to keep it that way. I sat back down and added a new note to the file. Phase 3 initiated. Documentation complete. Legal engagement next. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even emotional. It was just the next line in the audit. The email from Nadia came at exactly 6:07 p.m. Subject line, "Ready to proceed." I clicked it before the coffee even finished brewing. Inside was a short message. "We'll file the demand letter tonight. I've drafted everything. You just need to review and confirm. Also, attached was a clean PDF. No drama, no extra adjectives. Just facts. The same language I'd learned in uniform, direct, final, unemotional. The document began with one sentence that felt like a switch flipping. This correspondence serves as formal notice of reimbursement due to Miss Lindsay Hartman. Reading it out loud almost made me laugh. They'd always called me the responsible one. I guess now I was living up to it legally. I scrolled through the pages, every detail laid out. Amounts, dates, account records, digital signatures. Nadia had highlighted each section with the same precision I used when building flight logs. It was like watching my life turn into evidence one transaction at a time. When I finished reading, I typed 3 words back. "Send it, file it." Her reply came 30 seconds later. Done. That was it. No speeches, no build-up, just a quiet confirmation that the line between family and litigation was now officially crossed. I stared at the laptop for a moment. There wasn't satisfaction. There wasn't guilt. Just balance. At 6:22, my phone buzzed. First call. Mom. I let it ring out. Then Melissa. Then Dad. I didn't answer any of them. Then came a text from Mom. "We need to talk. You've gone too far. Call me immediately. I, my Nadia." The words were almost comforting in their familiarity. The same tone she used when I was a kid and spilled something on the carpet. Only now the stain was truth. At 6:41, I opened my email again to find Nadia's second message. Letters sent. Certified mail and digital copies. Expect reaction within 24 hours. I didn't have to wait that long. By 7:10, my phone lit up like a control panel. Calls, messages, even a voicemail from Melissa that started with yelling and ended with crying. I didn't play it all. I didn't need to. Another text from Mom came 5 minutes later. "How could you do this to us? After everything we've done for you?" I stared at it for a moment, then typed back, "Exactly." Then I hit delete instead of send. Some messages don't deserve delivery. The emails from the utility company, the mortgage firm, the bank all started rolling in, confirming the account changes, the frozen authorizations, the name removals. Each one read like a small victory report. At 8:03, Nadia called. "Everything's official," she said. "I know. You sound steady." "I am. That's good. Because they won't be." She wasn't wrong. At 8:26, Mom posted again. "Some people let greed destroy everything sacred. I raised her better." It got fewer likes this time. People were starting to recognize a pattern. One comment stood out. Aunt Gina again. You forged her signature. Sit down. No one replied after that. By 9, my inbox looked like a courtroom transcript. Bank notifications, legal confirmations, family outrage all lined up neatly in chronological order. I made one last folder for it all. Case, file, final. I took a sip of cold coffee and realized something strange. I wasn't thinking about winning or losing. I was thinking about procedure. Every choice I made tonight followed a protocol. Gather intel, verify, execute. This wasn't revenge. It was logistics. The phone buzzed again, another unknown number. I answered this time. Miss Hartman? A woman's voice said. This is Amy Patel from the State Probate Office. We've been reviewing your grandmother's trust documents and we found something concerning. My brain shifted instantly into analysis mode. Go on. There's a signature mismatch on the beneficiary list. It looks like your name was replaced. When? About 3 years ago. By whom? We can't confirm yet, but based on handwriting, she paused. It matches your mother's record from previous filings. For a moment the air felt heavier. Not shocking, just confirming what I already knew deep down, that this wasn't about money anymore. It was about entitlement passed down like an heirloom. I thanked her, asked for documentation, and forwarded everything straight to Nadia. Her reply came 2 minutes later. Inheritance fraud. We'll add it to the injunction. Lore. It was almost poetic. The family trying to erase me had literally erased me from a legal document. By 9:40, another email popped up from the court's filing system confirming receipt of Nadia's documents. Demand notice accepted. Hearing pending. I saved it and closed every tab except the spreadsheet. Each number glowed like a breadcrumb leading back to where it all began. Trust, misplaced. Loyalty, exploited. The phone buzzed again, this time a voicemail from Dad. His voice was low, tired. Sweetheart, please, let's just talk. This isn't worth it. That word worth stuck with me. They still didn't understand. This wasn't about value. It was about boundaries. I didn't delete the voicemail. I just renamed it Evidence, Emotional, Manipulation 1, MP3. The apartment was quiet again. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty. It feels earned. At 10:15, I got another email from Nadia, shorter this time. Filed. Served. Sleep well. I almost smiled. She knew me well enough to know I wouldn't. The kettle clicked behind me. I poured hot water over an instant packet and watched the steam curl up. It smelled sterile. Just like everything tonight, no warmth, no nostalgia, just process. I sat back down and opened the property deed from my files. The one from 2018. My name still listed as the owner. Mom had always said, "This house is our legacy." I looked at the line under registered owner. Lindsay Hartman. Not our. The document was clear. Legally, the house was mine. They'd built their comfort on my credit and my silence. Both were now withdrawn. At 10:52, I opened a blank email draft addressed to Nadia. Subject line, next steps. I typed, confirm eviction timeline. Begin title transfer. I didn't hit send right away. I just watched the cursor blink at the end of the sentence. There was no cinematic music, no dramatic satisfaction. Just that same steady calm that had followed me since the first message. The phone buzzed again, Melissa this time. You can't really mean this. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to clarify. I checked the clock. 11:03 p.m. The city outside was still alive. Faint traffic, someone's laughter echoing down the street. Ordinary sounds. Inside, everything felt suspended not in tension, but in completion. I took a long breath, closed the email, and reopened my spreadsheet one last time for the night. Each line sat there like a verdict, factual and final. The total at the bottom hadn't changed, but the meaning had. It was no longer a record of loss. It was a record of recovery. The first call from the county clerk came early the next morning. Her tone was polite, almost apologetic. Miss Hartman, your injunction has been approved. The freeze on the Hartman family assets is active as of 8:14 a.m. I thanked her and hung up. Just like that, years of quiet enabling turned into a single line of legal text. I didn't feel proud or vindicated, just finished. The silence lasted less than an hour. At 9:03, the storm began. Mom called first, 6 times in a row. Then Melissa, then Dad. The voicemails came back-to-back, fragments of panic recorded in real time. "Lindsay, please call me. We can fix this." "What did you do?" "Huh. The mortgage company just called. They froze the account." "You're going to ruin us." Each voice trembled with the same disbelief. Not that they'd been caught, but that I had finally acted. I didn't answer. I just saved every voicemail under a new folder called Panic Log. By noon, my inbox was a museum of meltdown. Mom's emails came in bursts, no greetings, no punctuation. Just demands. "Turn it back on, we'll talk about it. You're not thinking straight. This is your family. Stop this before it's too late." I scrolled through, calm, detached. The military calls it situational awareness. I called it survival. Then came the social backlash. Melissa posted a picture of her and Mom on Facebook with a caption, "Family is supposed to forgive, not destroy." It got sympathy for about 10 minutes before someone commented, "Didn't she cover your house and tuition?" Silence again. Then the thread disappeared. At 1:17, Nadia texted, "Court order processed. Eviction notice approved. Deed confirmed under your name. You're clear to proceed." Her efficiency was surgical. I replied with 2 words, "Execute notice." At 2 p.m., the sheriff's office emailed confirmation. A physical copy of the eviction order would be delivered within 7 business days. The language was dry, almost clinical. The occupants of the property are to vacate the premises within the designated timeline or be subject to enforcement. Endeavor. The word occupants hit me harder than I expected. That's what my parents had become. Not homeowners. Occupants. I printed the notice, folded it neatly, and set it on the corner of my desk. By 3:20, Mom tried a new strategy: guilt. "You're not heartless. I know you. You're just angry. We forgive you." Forgive me. That was new. A last-ditch attempt to turn power into sin. I didn't respond. Forgiveness wasn't a transaction I owed anymore. Then came the text from Dad. Short, careful, "Please don't do this. Your mother's not well." It might have worked once. Not now. I'd seen this tactic too many times, guilt disguised as compassion. The message wasn't really about Mom's health. It was about control. At 4, Nadia called. "It's done. They've been served digitally. Physical notice goes out tomorrow." "How long before it's public?" "Probably already is. Small towns talk fast." She wasn't wrong. 10 minutes later, my cousin forwarded a screenshot of Mom's new post. "She's suing her own parents. We don't even have food in the house." The replies started predictable: pity, shock, judgment, but the tone shifted fast. "Didn't she pay for everything you have? Isn't the house in her name? You can't fake signatures and then play victim." By 5 p.m., the post had more laughing reactions than likes. I didn't enjoy it, but I won't lie, it felt balanced. At 6:12, there was a knock at my door. I checked the peephole. Mom. Her eyes red, hair unbrushed, clutching a white envelope. "Lindsay," she said, voice shaking. "Please, don't do this. We'll lose everything." "You already did," I said quietly. She held out the envelope. "This is all we have left. Please help your sister." "For Melissa?" "She's still your sister." I opened the door just wide enough to hand her the printed copy of the eviction notice. "You'll get the official one next week," I said. Her face drained of color. "You wouldn't." "I already did." For a second, she just stared, searching for the old version of me, the fixer, the wallet, the daughter who believed every lie wrapped in the word love. But that version was gone. "Goodbye, Mom." I closed the door. I didn't lock it right away. I just stood there, listening to her footsteps fade down the hall. No crying, no shouting, just the slow shuffle of defeat. When it was finally quiet, I exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. The apartment felt still. No phones buzzing, no guilt dripping through text messages. Just quiet. At 7, I sat back at my desk. The spreadsheet was still open, the cursor blinking on the last line. I added one more entry. Legal recovery initiated, emotional liability cleared. It looked neat, controlled. like closure in Excel format. My email chimed again, this time from the property management firm handling the eviction. Confirmation. Ownership verified. Documentation filed. Process underway. The whole thing read like a military report, cold, concise, flawless. At 7:45, the phone buzzed again. A new number. Unknown. I answered. "This is Amy Patel with the State Probate Office again," she said. "We've completed our review. The forged signature has been authenticated. Legal proceedings for inheritance fraud will begin next week." I didn't flinch. "Good. Please include all supporting documents in the record." She hesitated. "Miss Hartman, this could lead to prosecution." "I know. Against your family." "I know that too." When we hung up, I opened the folder labeled Inheritance. Proof. Every screenshot, every PDF, every name, it was all there. The pattern was clear. For years, they'd rewritten my generosity as obligation. Then, when the money ran dry, they rewrote my identity. But this time, the story was mine to file. At 8:30, I poured another cup of coffee and opened a clean document. Title: Statement of Record. The first line came easily. "This is not revenge. This is reclamation." The words sounded calm, like they'd been waiting to be written for a long time. I kept typing until the page filled with dates, facts, and final statements. No emotion, no poetry, just truth formatted for court. Outside, the sky dimmed into that pale blue before night. Inside, the glow from my laptop was the only light left. I didn't feel alone. I felt exact. The quiet in the room wasn't absence anymore. It was authority. By the time the official notice arrived, the city was already awake. Delivery trucks, traffic, people honking for no reason, everything moved like nothing extraordinary had happened. But inside my apartment, the sound of the mail slot snapping shut felt like the start of a new order. The envelope was thick, stamped with the county seal. Eviction order, property transfer confirmation, court filing notice, all three stacked together like layers of finality. I placed them neatly on the table beside my coffee mug. The smell of burnt espresso mixed with legal ink, sharp and bitter. At 9:15 a.m., my phone rang again. "Unknown number," I answered, thinking it might be the court clerk. It wasn't. "Lindsay, it's Dad." His voice sounded older. "Please don't hang up." "I wasn't planning to," I said flatly. He sighed like he'd been holding his breath since last week. "Your mother's... she's not herself. She's panicking. Melissa's crying every day. You've made your point. Can't we just fix this privately?" "It was private for years," I said. "That's why it got this bad. I know your mother went too far. But this isn't the way. We're family." "No, Dad," I said, keeping my voice even. "We were a contract. One I've finally closed." He didn't reply at first, just breathing, heavy and uneven. "I wish you'd come see her. You'd understand." I almost laughed. Understand what? Forgery? Fraud? Or the part where she called the bank pretending to be me? "Don't twist it, Lindsay. She thought she was helping." I cut him off. "Dad, stop explaining crimes like they're misunderstandings." He went quiet again. "You've changed. End her now." "Finally," I said, and ended the call. The phone buzzed almost instantly, another incoming call, this time from Melissa. I didn't answer. Then came the text. "If you don't talk to us, we'll come to you." That one made me pause. It wasn't a threat exactly, but it wasn't a suggestion either. At 10:22, the buzzer to my apartment rang. Once, twice. Then a knock. I didn't have to look through the peephole to know who it was. Mom's voice came muffled through the door. "Lindsay, please. I just want to talk." I opened it halfway. She looked smaller somehow. Her posture slumped, mascara smeared. She was holding a folded newspaper and a manila envelope, probably another emotional weapon disguised as paperwork. 5 minutes, I said. She stepped in like she was entering sacred ground. Her eyes darted around the apartment, neat, orderly, minimalist. "You live like a stranger," she said softly. "Funny. I thought you'd like that. You made me one." Her jaw tightened. She set the envelope down on the table, right next to the eviction notice I'd already placed there. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "Lindsay, we didn't mean for it to go this far," she began. "Melissa made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can pay you back." "With what?" The house you lost or the credit cards you maxed? She flinched like I'd slapped her. You don't have to be cruel. I'm not being cruel, I'm being accurate. She reached for the envelope and slid it toward me. There's something you should see. It's your grandmother's letter. The real one. The one she wrote before she passed. I didn't move. You forged the trust documents. Spare me the sentiment. Her voice cracked. She wanted you to forgive us. I stared at her, this woman who'd spent years calling manipulation love. No, Mom. You want me to forgive you, she's gone. And I've already done what she would have wanted. I stopped enabling you. Us. The silence that followed felt dense, like air too thick to breathe. She tried again, quieter. We're losing everything. Do you really want that on your conscience? That's not my conscience, I said. That's your math catching up. Her eyes watered, but there were no tears left to fall. I thought you'd come home one day, that you'd remember you're still part of us. I picked up the eviction notice, unfolded it, and placed it next to her hand. You said it yourself. I'm no longer family. I just made it official. She stared at the paper like it might rewrite itself if she waited long enough. Then she whispered, I never thought you'd turn on your own blood. I met her eyes. You drained mine first. For a moment, everything stopped. No traffic, no sound, no movement. Just two people standing in a small apartment, surrounded by paperwork that looked more like evidence than family history. When she finally turned to leave, she said, You'll regret this someday. I didn't answer. I just opened the door wider. She walked out without looking back. The latch clicked. The room was still. I stood there for a while, breathing in the leftover perfume. She always wore something floral that never fit her. It faded quickly. I sat back down at the table, pulled the envelope toward me, and opened it. Inside was a handwritten note in my grandmother's shaky script. Lindsay, don't let them use your kindness against you. Peace isn't what they tell you it is. Sometimes peace means distance. I smiled. Just once. My grandmother always saw things clearly. The phone buzzed again this time. A text from Nadia. All filings processed. Hearing date confirmed for Thursday. Be ready for testimony. Testimony? I texted back. They're contesting the ownership. They'll show up. Of course they would. I glanced at the uniform still hanging in my hallway closet. The one I'd kept even after I left active duty. I hadn't worn it in years, but tonight, it didn't feel symbolic. It felt relevant. Discipline wasn't a job description. It was a posture. I closed the message thread, opened my laptop, and began drafting my statement for court. Every sentence was clean, factual, unflinching. No emotional bait, no storytelling. Just truth formatted for impact. At 1:17 p.m., I stopped typing long enough to notice the silence. The kind that feels like the world holding its breath before something final. I thought about Mom, about the look on her face when she realized I wasn't bluffing, about how many years I'd spent apologizing for being the only adult in a house full of dependents. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel triumph. Just steadiness, the kind that comes when you stop negotiating with dysfunction. The cursor blinked at the end of the page. I added one last line. I didn't choose war. I just stopped surrendering. I saved the file and closed the laptop. The glow faded, leaving me in soft afternoon light. Through the window, the sky was pale and clean, the kind of color that shows up after a storm. I stood there for a moment, hands in my pockets, and watched the traffic move like nothing unusual was happening. It struck me that peace doesn't announce itself. It just waits for you to notice it's already here. The courthouse smelled like old paper and cold air. I sat in the back row, still in uniform. It wasn't required, but it helped. The structure of it, the sharp collar, the pressed lines reminded me who I was before all this noise. Nadia sat next to me, laptop open, calm as ever. Across the aisle, my family looked like strangers playing roles they didn't understand. Mom in a beige suit that tried too hard to look respectable. Melissa in oversized sunglasses indoors, scrolling her phone like she could scroll her way out of a lawsuit. Dad staring at the floor, maybe hoping it would swallow him. The clerk called the case. Hartman v. Hartman. I didn't react. When it was my turn, I stood and took the oath. The judge looked over the documents. Nadia had organized bank transfers, signed forms, forged signatures. Each exhibit landed like a quiet gavel. Mom's attorney tried the emotional angle. Your Honor, this is a family dispute, not fraud. They're just hurt people making mistakes. The judge didn't blink. Mistakes don't usually involve falsifying legal signatures. I stayed silent, eyes forward, posture straight. Years in the service had trained me to control every visible muscle. When the judge asked if I had anything to add, I said, only that I stopped paying for their definition of family the day they stopped earning mine. That was it. No monologue, no breakdown. Just the record. By noon, the ruling was in. The court upheld ownership, froze all remaining accounts, and confirmed restitution due for fraudulent withdrawals. There were no cheers, no gasps. Just a shuffle of papers and a few murmured, "So be it's." Mom didn't look at me when it ended. Melissa did, for a second. Her eyes were red but dry. There was no hatred there, just disbelief that the game had rules after all. Outside, the sunlight felt different. Not warmer, just less filtered. I stood on the courthouse steps, watching people pass like the world hadn't just recalibrated. Nadia handed me a folder with the final paperwork. "It's done," she said. "I know." "You okay?" "Better than I expected." She smiled a little. "You handled this like a soldier. Maybe too much like one." She shrugged. "Discipline isn't cold, Lindsay. It's just efficient." We shook hands, and she left. I walked a few blocks before realizing I didn't have anywhere specific to go. For years, home had been a moving target. Sometimes their house, sometimes the base, sometimes a hotel room between deployments. Now, it was a small apartment filled with peace and receipts. When I got back, the answering machine was blinking. 4 new messages. I deleted 3 without listening. The last one was from Dad. "We're moving out. Your mother's angry, but I get it now. Take care of yourself." That was all he said. It was probably the most honest sentence he'd spoken in a decade. I poured a drink not to celebrate, just to mark the quiet. The amber liquid caught the light, steady and still. At 6 p.m., my phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "You won. Happy now?" No name, but it didn't need one. Melissa had a rhythm to her cruelty. I stared at the screen, then typed back. "No one wins when you play with blood." Then I blocked the number. The next few days moved in slow order. The utilities shut off at their old address. The real estate agent handled the sale. The funds transferred cleanly to my account. No surprises, no errors, no messages. The silence was surgical. When the confirmation email came through, I sat in front of the screen for a while. Watching that one line of text felt strange. Property sold, transfer complete. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like paperwork catching up to reality. Later that week, I drove past the old house one last time. The lawn was overgrown, blinds drawn, mailbox stuffed with envelopes. It looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but symbolically. For years, that place had felt like proof that I belonged somewhere. Now it was just coordinates on a map. A for sale sign leaned slightly forward in the yard, creaking in the wind. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't need to. Closure doesn't always need a view. Back at my apartment, the spreadsheet was still open on the laptop. I scrolled through it, every payment, every lie, every quiet debt repaid. The total column glowed at the bottom, exact to the cent. I hovered over the file name, Operation Ledger. Then I hit delete. No backups. No archive. Gone. The act didn't feel dramatic. It just felt like a breath I'd been holding for years, finally leaving my lungs. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. No missed calls, no pending crises. Just sunlight and stillness. I made coffee, opened the window, and stood there long enough to hear the city stretch awake. I caught my reflection in the glass, same face, but lighter somehow. Less armor. The email from the court came later that day. Case resolved. Repayment plan signed. Probate reversed. You are clear. The word clear echoed a bit longer than it should have. I didn't forward it to anyone. I didn't even print it. I just let it sit in my inbox as a reminder that some wars don't end with noise. They end when you stop defending people who never stopped attacking you. By evening, I started boxing up the few things that still reminded me of them: photos, cards, small gifts that had all aged poorly under truth. I left one picture on the shelf, my grandmother's, The one who taught me that peace isn't silence, it's balance. When the boxes were taped and labeled, the apartment looked emptier, but not lonely. Outside, the city lights blinked to life. I turned off the lamp, sat on the couch, and let the hum of the street fill the space where their chaos used to live. For the first time, the quiet didn't sound like loss. It sounded like order. The morning after everything closed, the city felt sharper, cleaner, the kind of stillness that happens when life finally stops running on borrowed noise. I woke up without checking my phone first. No new messages, no missed calls, no emergencies with my name on them, just quiet. Sunlight spilled across the floor, slow and unhurried. I made coffee and watched the steam rise, remembering all those mornings when I used to wake up to another favor from Mom or another crisis text from Melissa. Now there was nothing to fix. Nothing waiting. The apartment looked different in the morning light, not bigger, just honest. The stack of legal folders was gone. The walls were bare. My desk was finally clean. It looked like a place someone could live instead of hide. I turned on the radio, some soft jazz, the kind that doesn't demand attention, and sat by the window with my coffee. For once, I wasn't reviewing documents or checking account statements. I was just still. When I logged into my email, there was one unread message from Nadia. Case finalized. Deeds transferred. All accounts settled. You're officially clear. I stared at the word clear. It didn't look real. I'd spent so many years cleaning up other people's messes that I'd forgotten what that word felt like when it applied to me. I typed a short reply. Thank you for everything. She wrote back instantly. Don't thank me. You did the hard part. I closed the laptop and let that line sink in. By afternoon, I had errands to run, small things that had nothing to do with the past. Groceries, dry cleaning, new running shoes. It was strange how peace could make ordinary errands feel like milestones. At one point, standing in line at the store, I saw a woman arguing on her phone. My sister doesn't appreciate anything I do, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was familiar. For a moment, I saw myself years ago, the version that would have stepped in, soothed things, paid for someone else's mistake. That version was gone now. Outside, the air smelled like rain. I walked the long way home. No music, no distractions, just the sound of tires on wet pavement and a city that didn't care who I used to be. When I got back, a letter was waiting in the mail. Handwritten, postmarked from a small town outside Dallas. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Mom's. I opened it carefully. Lindsay, we've moved. The house is gone, but we'll be okay. Your father's found work, and Melissa's staying with a friend. I know you think we don't deserve forgiveness, but one day you'll understand why I did what I did. I was scared. I wanted to protect us. I hope you find peace. Mom. There was no apology in it. Not really. Just justification disguised as regret. But the strange part was I didn't need an apology anymore. I folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and tucked it in a drawer with a few old photos I hadn't thrown away yet. Not out of sentiment, just evidence that I'd survived something I never planned to. That night, I sat on the floor with a single glass of whiskey and watched the city lights blink through the window. It used to feel like those lights were mocking me, people out there living while I was stuck being my family's accountant, therapist, and scapegoat. Now they just looked like what they were. Lights. I thought about Grandma's note, the one I'd kept on my desk. Peace isn't loud. It's quiet, steady, earned. She was right. Peace isn't a reward. It's a boundary. You don't win it, you maintain it. The phone buzzed once more. A text from an unknown number. We forgive you. I didn't reply. Forgiveness wasn't a currency I traded in anymore. Instead, I opened my old spreadsheet software, blank now, and typed 3 words across the top of the new file. Future expenses only. Then I closed it without saving. The next morning, I packed a small bag and drove out of the city for the first time in months. The highway stretched straight and clean. No traffic, no noise, just open road. Somewhere along the way, I stopped at a small diner. The waitress asked if I wanted the military discount. I said no. Not because I was ashamed, but because I didn't need an identity to justify my worth anymore. When I finished eating, I drove until I saw a cemetery sign I recognized. My grandmother's. The grass was overgrown, but the tulips I'd planted months ago had bloomed again. I knelt down, brushed the dirt from her headstone, and whispered, "It's done." The wind moved through the trees like an answer. For a while, I stayed there not talking, not thinking, just existing in the kind of quiet that felt earned. When I finally stood up, I didn't look back. The car door shut with the soft click of finality, the kind that doesn't hurt anymore. On the drive home, I realized something that made me smile. All my life, I'd been taught that family means loyalty. But the truth was simpler. Family means whoever doesn't demand that you disappear to keep them comfortable. The rest are just people you used to know. By the time I reached the city again, the sun was setting behind the skyline, painting the buildings gold. My apartment lights glowed faintly through the window, constant, steady, ordinary. Inside, everything was exactly as I left it. The same coffee mug on the counter, the same quiet hum of the fridge, but it didn't feel like evidence anymore. It felt like life small, stable, and mine. I poured water into the kettle, waited for it to boil, and caught my reflection in the window one last time. The same face stared back, but this time I recognized her. New armor, new weight, new apology. Just peace, quiet, steady, earned.